Good morning.
Again, my name's Chris DeWitt with VHB. I think most of you know me by now. But good to see everybody and good to be here to give you an update on the pedestrian improvements. I've got a relatively brief presentation here, much of which you will have seen before. Not much has changed substantially with the plans, but what I hope to do today is just emphasize what is in the current set of construction drawings. The phase that we're looking to build over the next winter season, talk about schedule and where we are with all of that and what to expect moving forward. Just some recent activity focused on the upcoming phase, and then look to schedule and what you might be expecting for the rest of this year and into next year. I think you've seen this slide many times. This is a summary of the overall project, really going back, coming out of the comprehensive pedestrian plan and looking at doing design plans from Four Seasons up to Ship's Watch, with the sidewalks, the bike lanes, the crosswalks, and the other improvements. Again, going back to the original project, we advanced those plans to a fairly advanced point for the full corridor, and you'll see those, and we've got the various phases highlighted, but we really advanced the plans for that full project before we started looking at a smaller phase for short-term construction. So when we were doing that overall plan, this was the original phasing, and we were looking at a way to potentially spread construction costs over time, making sure we had phases that were constructible during an off-season, and also focusing on logical termini. What's a good place to start and stop a construction project? And so phase one was really focused at the crosswalks, relatively low-cost, straightforward improvements. Phase two was the improvements on the east side of the road from Four Seasons to Duck Deli. Phase three was the west side from Aqua up to Cook Drive, and then phase four, the north end of the project. Again, you'll see these on the graphics that I'm going to show in a minute. But this was the original phasing that we looked at. And as we got into the design plans for all of this and started looking at costs and potential funding sources, we started to think about, and the town started to talk about, combining phases one and two into a construction implementation phase. And so this is how that revised phasing looks. Basically now phase one is the crosswalks and the improvements on the east side of the road from Four Seasons to Duck Deli. And then phase two and three, were the three and four previously, the west side and then the north end improvements. So we've got this color-coded. I'm going to run through the plan slides that you've seen before, but this will be a color-coded version. So the yellow is the current phase, the new phase one improvements. The purplish color is phase two, and then red is phase three, which is the north end improvements. So we'll start from south and move north. This is in the vicinity of Four Seasons. You can see the gateway median there, just north of the entrance to Four Seasons. That, even though it's not coded yellow, that gateway median is part of phase one. Phase one also would extend the existing shared use path that terminates north of Four Seasons, extend that up to the crosswalk at Aqua. So you can see the thick yellow line is the shared use path, the asphalt shared use path extending from Four Seasons up to that first crosswalk, which is the crosswalk at Aqua, at which point we transition to sidewalks and bike lanes. And the yellow, the east side sidewalk, is shown as part of phase one, with the purple being the west side as phase two. And you can see the crosswalks that would be implemented as part of the project as well. This is just continuing along. Again, nothing really new to show here, just emphasizing the phasing. East side is phase one, west side is phase two. And the plans are doing things like avoiding inlet drains, moving retaining walls where needed, avoiding power pedestals, those types of details that we've been focused on as we prepare this construction package for phase one. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions. This is just continuing north. up to the town park on the west here, and again, Phase 1 and Phase 2, yellow Phase 1, purple Phase 2, with the crosswalk improvements shown as part of Phase 1.
And Chris, the blue shows the bike lane, right? The blue.
The blue is the bike lane, yes, correct. Yes, so again, the typical section, I should have emphasized that. The typical section for most of the corridor, except the southern end where we're extending the shared use path, the typical section is 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the road, 4-foot bike lane on both sides of the road with a buffer strip between the sidewalk and the bike lane. And again, yellow being the current phase, purple being the next phase.
There's no buffer between the bike lane and the road, though?
No, striping between the bike lane and the road, correct.
Is it going to be that bumpy striping or just?
No plans for rumble strips, just the striping. This is continuing north. Again, nothing new, no real changes here. The one change that has come into play here is the treatment of the slope in front of PNC Bank. Initially, if you recall, we were talking about potentially removing that access drive that goes in front of the building to get the grade that we needed to put in the sidewalk.
Where the little bulkhead is, the little, right? Isn't there like a?
No, it slopes up now.
Okay.
And there's a little access drive that goes around in front of the bank. And we thought initially that we would, if to avoid a retaining wall, we would need to remove that access drive, and had coordinated that with the property owner. That turns out, as we got into the detailed design, not to be necessary. We can do the grading we need to do, fit the sidewalk in there, not have a retaining wall, and just leave the access drive as is. Continuing further north, crosswalks and sidewalks and bike lane as part of Phase 1 on the east side. Ditto up to the water tower. The triangular property that you see on the left side of your screen here is Duck Deli, and that is where the Phase 1 sidewalk would end. You can see that the Phase 2 sidewalk would continue a little farther north across the frontage of the parking lot at the waterfront shops. And then the sidewalks on both sides would terminate at that northern crosswalk there where the purple line ends. And we would shift, and again, yellow Phase 1, purple Phase 2, and red being the north end improvements, what we're now calling Phase 3. Would start and pick up, and at that northern, excuse me, that northern crosswalk there where we shift to the east side, the sidewalk would be wider. It would be an 8-foot sidewalk on one side, not putting the sidewalk on the side where the sound comes all the way up to the road. That treatment would continue essentially up to Sunset Grill. This section does require some pretty significant retaining wall work. And then this would terminate the project just north of Sunset Grill and the post office right at Ship's Watch. And then also I want to emphasize that this refuge island and crosswalk improvement that you see here at Sunset Grill is part of Phase 1. So the median island at Four Seasons, the refuge island at Sunset Grill are part of the Phase 1 improvements, even though the sidewalk wouldn't be constructed at this point. So just to emphasize what is included in Phase 1, it is now crosswalk improvements and some new crosswalks for the entire corridor. Gateway treatments that I mentioned at Four Seasons and Sunset Grill. Accessibility and utility adjustments where needed for the crosswalks and the sidewalks. 8-foot shared use path, asphalt path from Four Seasons up to Aqua. The 5-foot sidewalk, the landscape buffer strip, and the bike lane from Aqua up to Duck Deli. And associated with all of that would be grading and drainage improvements. So recently we've been progressing the design plans that we did for the entire corridor. We've been progressing the Phase 1 section of that into construction level plans. That required a little bit of additional survey at some of the more complicated driveway locations where we have some slope considerations. And really focusing on the grading. This is that access drive at PNC that I was talking about, where we were able to get in and, as we take a closer look, minimize potential property impacts and try to solve some of those grading and drainage issues. We have met with the town and DOT to review the plans. DOT is fully supportive of the plans, basically said submit them to us and we'll give you your encroachment permit. We have met with Dominion Power and are continuing to coordinate with them. They've got some, obviously, as you all know, some above-ground utility infrastructure as well as some underground utility infrastructure. We reviewed the plans with them and have talked specifically about how to protect their underground assets. And how to note that on the plans, and then went in the field with them and looked at some specific locations where some of the overhead, some of the guy wires for some of the poles need to be adjusted, coordinating that with Dominion. Also the large box, the big green box up at Shipswatch, broached that subject to them. They seemed willing to work with the town on relocating that. Don't have a final decision or final detail on that, but we're continuing to coordinate with them. That's obviously a big sight distance, a visibility factor, with or without this project. And they seem to understand that as we raised it. They weren't surprised we brought it up. They know it's a safety issue for them now, and that as part of this project, if it can be moved.
Are they going to want us to pay for that?
I'm sorry?
Is Dominion going to want us to pay for moving that transformer?
The quick answer and the safe answer to that is we don't know. The more nuanced answer, and since that's probably more like a phase 3 part, we can be more nuanced at this time, is that when we broached that subject with them, and I asked them straight up, I said, if it takes us paying for it, let us know. And they said, well, we had money in the budget previously to move that. And so we may be able to pay for it. So.
Good.
Well, if they're willing to move it, they can move it any time.
Yeah, I think they're bigger concern. Well, who knows what their concerns are? But it's complicated because of it's a major item. But they're going to have to get an easement from I think it's probably Shipswatch for that. And we asked them, well, we'll help you get that if that's what it takes. And they said, no, we have a good relationship. We don't think that'll be an issue. So, so again, we're continuing to talk with them about the utilities, and we're going to continue to pound on them.
Well, the only reason I mention it, it's a safety issue that if we can get it moved, the sooner we can get it moved, the better off we are.
Yeah, they're aware of it. I mean, they're aware of it, and I think, I think we need to give them some time to work it into their budget, to figure out how they're going to deal with it. Because frankly, even if we came to them and said we'd pay for it, we'd still have to go through that process, their internal process, to get it all scheduled. So I guess the takeaway that I would leave you with is we haven't been told that money is a determining factor on moving that yet.
Well, I was just hopeful we don't have to wait till we get to phase 3. If they're willing to move it, let's get it moved as soon as we can.
Yeah, our hope is that as we coordinate with them with some of the minor things in part of phase 1, that'll kickstart phase 2, and that'll start in the works right away.
Good.
So.
Okay.
So I have a question related to that. So are there three of those major utility boxes in the project area? There's one at Shipswatch. Isn't there one on the west side that's near?
Oh, you're right in front of.
Osprey Landing Shops?
Yeah,
Isn't there a
Osprey
large
Landing.
one? And is there one on the,
Right,
and is there one on the south end as well of the village?
We got one in front of Kellogg.
I think there's a big one in front of, maybe it's really big in front of Kellogg's. There's one medium-sized one in front
But
of.
we're not touching it as part of the yeah, it's not in the
They will
way.
need to, I think you have a slide coming up that shows some of the utility stuff.
Don't think so, but
I'm just wondering, like, when they go to do that kind of work, is it one of those things when they send out whoever they need to send out to deal with that, is it easier for them and maybe more cost-effective to do all of those locations at the same time? Or is it better to have it done as the project progresses, even though?
yeah, that's a good question and something we could talk to them about. The one at the north end needs to be moved just from a safety perspective. It's much larger than the others. The one in front of Kellogg we're not impacting. It can stay where it is. The one on the west side is a smaller box. It will need to be moved, but it actually, I think, makes sense to do that as part of the construction there. Yeah.
When we're in phase 2. Correct.
Yep.
And not to be cynical, but you can pretty much be guaranteed that whatever is going to cause the most disruption for the project, the most mess on the trail, the most cuts on the trail, and so on and so forth, is how to approach it.
Is what?
Is how to approach it.
That's not cynical.
The only, again, being facetious, the only thing that, I think if we actually put the sidewalks in first, that would guarantee that they would
Come back the next week and
because that's
cut it.
something new they can cut.
Chris, looking at that visual there,
It's true.
are water in the hydrants an issue? I mean,
We're going to have to
looking at
move
that-
some fire hydrants. Yeah, we'll have to make some adjustments to several fire hydrants. Yeah. So, the meeting with Dominion Power, obviously, we're focused on getting the final construction plan set and bid documents for Phase 1. And as part of that, looked at construction costs, and the town has pursued some funding and gotten some funding through the Tourism Board. It's not too difficult to see. Just to emphasize that the crosswalks are part of the Phase 1 project throughout the corridor, as well as gateway, the gateway treatments that I discussed, some of the utility relocations and signage that would occur at these crosswalks is part of, all that is part of Phase 1. Even though the sidewalks have a more limited project area, as shown there from Four Seasons to Duck Deli on the east side. This is an image of what the roadway cross-section might look like post-construction of Phase 1. I showed the lighting that you guys have already installed, the solar lights that are in. The striping to separate the bike lane is there. We would have the small landscape buffer and then the 5-foot sidewalk and the crosswalk and accessibility enhancements. From a cost perspective, this is our most recent cost estimate. Not substantially different from what you saw before, but, excuse me, losing my voice. The cost for Phase 1 went down a little bit because we initially had costs for hardwired lighting in Phase 1, and with the implementation of the solar lighting, that came out of the Phase 1. The second part of Phase 1, which was originally Phase 2, which is the sidewalks, that cost, I think, increased just a little bit because of some of the grading work that we need to do. But overall, I think the cost for the two phases actually went down a little bit because of the lighting factor. And this was the cost estimate that the town included in the grant application to the Tourism Board, right? No?
Not that number.
Not that number?
It's higher.
It was higher. We may have thrown some contingency in there. So in terms of next steps, again, we're wrapping up the final plan set. We've actually got those done and in final review on our end, wrapping up the plans and the bid package, which will occur this month. Follow-up coordination with Dominion and DOT, and then looking to put the project out to bid in early summer and hopefully receive bids and get an award late summer that will allow us to start construction in the off-season of 2017, 2018.
We'll also be working on the necessary construction easements and other easements that we may need. They're finalizing the survey work for that so that we can coordinate with Robert and get those easements taken care of.
Yep.
I have a question regarding sort of that outreach to the community at large. Will that be, this is super exciting, obviously, and I think there is a buzz about it, but how the property owners along the trail, are they going to be notified by the town or through just the project? For example, I'm just, obviously you've talked to some people where there's issues, but if there's no issues, what is the way we're going to be kind of communicating this project out to the general public?
I think a lot of that is going to really be direct communication. There'll be other avenues, of course, similar to what we're doing with beach nourishment, but we'd really like for the property owners to understand exactly what is going to be occurring in front of their properties. And not only that, but even the properties that don't have any significant, sort of ultimately don't have a significant impact on the property, it's just kind of running in front of it. There may even be temporary impacts as construction occurs in that area, where there may need to be, Chris and I have had a conversation in particular about Twitty Realty being, it may be a good example, where they've got multiple entrances and the ability we would have to leave at least 2 of those open at any time while we're working in front and may have to close one. So little things like that can lessen the impact on the business and really help them to understand what will be occurring. So we do anticipate having individual conversations with those folks, if at all possible, as long as it can be arranged to do with them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but when we first started this project, even last summer when we were refining the plans, at least in phase 1, I think we pretty much met with every individual property owner as part of that.
A lot of them,
I think if you weren't impacted, you probably weren't approached.
Well,
I'm guessing, only because I wasn't.
I know we did. Well, we didn't. I guess we didn't talk to you, but we I know we did reach out as part of that as part of that discussion.
Yeah, I just felt like probably the reason that particularly I wasn't reached out as a property owner was because it wasn't any big deal. Like it wasn't like a problem with the bulkhead but then it was be curious to me just, and then you could look at I think we did see the plans. Obviously, I mean all property owners have been invited to see what's going to look like. I'm not suggesting that. I just was curious about what kind of outreach there was, and also what type of timing are we talking about in terms of like starting in November? Great, that's a beautiful time of year to be doing a project like this. And are we expecting it to take 4 months or 5, or do we know?
That's, I mean, we're gonna set it up so that the contractor is finished in spring. We want the job done before the season starts up again. 4 to 5 months is sounding about right.
Okay. I had no idea.
But it's
pretty substantial.
It's a doable project. If we can get started in November and go through the winter, we can finish it up by spring.
Right.
Like everything, it ends up being weather dependent.
It's very
Yeah.
weather dependent.
Exactly.
Yes.
And one of the positives about this phase is that there's really only a small part that's asphalt, and what we've been hearing is that if it's concrete, which the sidewalks would be, and not asphalt, it's much easier for them to get concrete than asphalt. And so at least that's what RPC and Farmville have told us, and they're probably going to be the big players in this. And so that helps with their scheduling.
That's going to look really attractive,
It is.
The white, the concrete will be really delineate from the road. That's going to be really nice.
Will we close one lane of traffic the entire way for 6 months or whatever?
I don't know yet. A maintenance of traffic plan is going to have to be part of the construction discussions. At least some lane closure is going to be necessary. I don't know if it'll be for the entire duration of the project. And shifting traffic over to use the turn lane and those types of considerations, we'll need to coordinate with the contractor and with DOT. But there will be some level of lane closure for at least some of the project.
That's going to be so great. Oh,
Tell me about it.
I'm excited.
Wow.
I know, it's going to be unbelievable that it's this coming up like this. Thank you, Tourism Bureau.
And you got no objections from DOT, right? DOT is pretty much... totally on
DOT
board?
has, we sat down with them, had a meeting with them, and reviewed the plans, and they expressed full support for the project.
With no money.
Right. Easy for them when they're not paying, right?
What's interesting is the tool that Betsy was just describing that's going to be on the More Beach to Love site with the Google map and people being able to sort of see the impacts and the progress as it goes. I don't know if this is on a big enough scale with road construction versus a beach nourishment project, but even if there was a way of having some, maybe not updated daily, but maybe updated weekly, of some kind of tool like that to, wouldn't be in real time, but in some kind of way to allow people to see, okay, this is going to be a potential traffic impact or access impact, maybe on a weekly basis if it's going to go across a period of 4 to 5 months. Fortunately, it's happening at a time when commerce is in a slower stage, but
Well, it could also, another point too, is it could affect residents on the subdivisions that have to get out
Yeah,
at that
yeah.
time to have that schedule so that they would know, more multi-path to love. I don't know, maybe we could do that.
We'll do it on that map, pop-up with text. So we can put whatever we want on there. It can be from, this date to this date, we're gonna be working here. It could be
Right.
more general. And then also, again, for more questions, contact whoever.
Right.
You can pop up text on it.
And I think, and if there isn't already a separate tab on the project, it would be really great to have some things like your presentation or particular slides from the presentation where you can just kind of get at a glance sort of really good information about what's going on.
And those are up.
I figure they are, I'm just not looking.
We'll
sorry.
obviously add this
Yeah.
to be the most current
The
version.
visuals and everything are, just so everyone can get excited about it.
Yeah, we haven't given a whole lot of thought yet to exactly the sort of the
How to-
PR blitz during
right.
construction time at this point. We'll certainly refine,
Yeah.
develop that and refine it as we go forward because there will be a lot of cranky people.
We'll be really good at dealing with cranky people by then, after the nourishment.
I would think the hard PR part of that could start in the fall.
Yeah.
Because nobody thinks about the fall until after the summer. So
Exactly.
have stuff on the website, information, and that can start.
Yeah.
We'll have to revise our Facebook policy. Not allow posts.
Not allowed either. I can change that.
change the profanity filter to strong.
There you go. There you go.
You want it to feel real, Chris, come on now, This isn't Disneyland as much as we.
Thank you.
Do you anticipate any roadblocks at all as we move forward?
No pun intended, roadblock. No, I think we've done good coordination with property owners, with DOT, and with Dominion. The coordination with Dominion is going to need to continue, and as is the property owner coordination. And weather could play a factor in construction, but I think we've got a pretty well-defined phase. And I think I hate to say this, it's a relatively straightforward project.
Oh, I know that.
Right.
And, one of the things, when we met with Dominion Power, one of the lessons we learned from the Tuckahoe project, or the South Duck project, was that we need to physically go in and locate utilities, which we did, even though they didn't show up very, on a small sheet, they didn't show up very clearly. But we did locate those, but that doesn't guarantee that we found everything. And, you know, and,
That's a good point.
and the other thing is that, for example, one of the, just to give you an idea of the sort of the complicated nature of this is that, you know, utility lines are required to be, what, 3 feet below grade? And so, you know, as we're building, we have to make sure that whatever is finished is, you know, meets that requirement. There are similar requirements for water lines and other things. And so, you know, we believe that everything's been located, but one little surprise like that, and suddenly we may be stalled because, you know, because they have to come in and move something or do something else. So
The main Dominion line running north and south is under the roadway pavement and will not be impacted by what we're doing. They have several main connector lines that will cross under our sidewalk. And in those locations, we're going to have to coordinate very closely with the contractor to maintain that minimum cover. There may be some splicing of the line to get it a little bit deeper based on some of the cut we're doing, but we've got those locations identified on the plans, and the main north-south Dominion line is not going to be impacted, so we're
The water lines, are the water lines right there too?
other side of the road.
Oh, good. Oh, good.
What about the situation with Duck Deli? The stone and the...
Duck Deli has obtained a permit to install the improvements per the conditional use permit. They obviously have not physically done it yet. In talking with Mr. Furlano just last week, actually, I believe. You know, he is still looking, he's getting bids from contractors on that to do the installation. They will be installing the portion, I guess looking at the map of this project, we might be possibly tapping in a little bit on the, you know, maybe on the very northern end, but otherwise they'll be constructing everything in front of the restaurant according to the specifications that VHB has provided. And we've communicated back and forth to be sure there's no misunderstanding of those specifications, and VHB has provided Duck Deli with those. So we do anticipate that those will be going in the near future at some point with the sidewalk and the improvements to their parking lot.
Will there be a buffer there? I can't remember.
I don't
In any
think we
kind
were
of
able to squeeze a buffer there because it was so
right next to the
tight, the way that the vehicles pull in straight on
Right.
like that, the depth required to accommodate those, we didn't end up with any buffer there.
So the sidewalk will be butting the road, basically?
Will be abutting the bike lane. So we still have a full bike lane, we still have a full sidewalk, so nothing will be shortchanged from that standpoint. The other challenge is also that because you have all the vehicles pulling directly in,
Right.
you can't have a landscape buffer
Understand.
because they would run over it. You know? So from that standpoint, it made more sense to just have that continuous stretch there.
Makes sense. Great. Exciting.
No questions.
Very
Thank you very much, Chris.
exciting.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.